All right, we are live. Yay! Welcome to another episode of the I forgot the name of my show already. Sunshine State Happy Hour, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com. If you're watching us on YouTube on the replay, hi. Hopefully you're relatively close to our air date. If you're watching us live on Facebook, that's a miracle because apparently StreamYard is telling me that something's going on with the Facebook connection, but hopefully everything is fine. Couple things to get into before we actually get into everything. Remember that today is Support Florida Craft Beer Day. We are working with Panhandle Brewing out in Sebastian to get the word out about all the different legal things that you can do to support Florida craft beer. There's a lot of legislation that we need to change, and we need to get the right legislators into Tallahassee on November 3rd. So come find us. We're at freethebrew.com or floridabeerblog.com. You can find the logo and put that up on social media. Yay. Also, if you are on my social media page, just to let you know, we do have a donors choose for a welcome and supportive person in the education community, otherwise known as my wife. I've already had some people donate, which is awesome. If you could, it's a really great cause. I do appreciate it. And one person that knows how great the cause is my co-host and field producer, Steve. Hello, Steve.
Hey, Dave. How's it going?
I'm just now seeing the cornhole boards behind you. They're looking pretty good.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, very nice. And what's cool is that I know that you have a couple more labels that you're going to be putting on your cornhole boards, courtesy of our guest today, Brian Detweiler, the head brewer of Third Planet Brewing up in Niceville, Florida. And I did not realize until I really started writing about beer that there is a place called Niceville, Florida. But it's starting to have its own little beer scene, isn't it?
A little bit, yeah. We're set to have our fourth different brewery in Niceville, yeah.
Which is kind of amazing because they're taking over the original spot from Third Planet.
Right, yeah. So back in 2015, we started with it was just what we had. It was a little basically we could brew 2 barrels at a time on a little Ruby Street. It basically is like it's just a large homebrew setup essentially. But it started out with these blue plastic drums that we would ferment in a temperature controlled room. It was interesting, but it got us open, got us moving. That was back in 2016. Then when we opened the new spot, we made them distinct, and we called the big spot the Mothership, and then the small place that was our original is the Launchpad. And the Launchpad just had their final weekend last weekend. So yeah, and Bayou Brewing will be assuming control of that spot. So yeah, that'll be number 4.
That's kind of amazing. And well, I guess we should say that it wasn't supposed to be just you. One of your brewers who actually helped me connect everything, Rachel Bright, was supposed to be on today's show, but she, like the Mothership, has absolutely no power right now. So how are things going up in that area? Not even talking about craft beer. How are things going with the hurricanes that came through?
So we have some friends who have probably gotten it, kind of bad. Rachel's in Navarre, a little closer to Pensacola. Pensacola, there's some pretty bad scenes that I'm seeing. Chunk of the bridge, the main bridge that connects like the beaches to Pensacola, there's just part of it missing. Downtown Pensacola looks a little flooded. We have some really good friends. I sent a crowler of pastry throws, I think. The Moon Pie Pastry Stout. That was a collab with Big Beach. There in Gulf Shores is where the hurricane truly hit land. I've reached out to Ryan a little bit, and I wouldn't be surprised if they took some damage too. So we're definitely counting our blessings to only have power out. At least we don't have water in the brew house or anything like that.
That's a shame. Well, hopefully things will get better. Unfortunately, I know there's a line of storms that are in the Atlantic right now that want to come this way, and hopefully we can un-2020 our storm season as quickly as humanly possible. So.
Yeah, we're a small town, so we have a lot of in terms of on the brewing scene, we have a lot of friends in Pensacola. So we're definitely thinking about all of them and hope they can get back and bounce back quickly.
And talking about the brewing scene in Pensacola, you're actually not drinking a Third Planet beer, which is awesome. And it kind of leads me into what I'm drinking, and then we'll talk about what Steve is drinking before we actually start talking about Third Planet itself. So you have, I guess, who do you have, and what do you have?
So this is a Crowler from Odd Colony. They're a pretty new brewery, right on Palafox in Pensacola. They're good buddies of ours. We did a collab, which I believe you have a can of. So they kind of specialize. I would call them kind of like a brewer's brewery. They do, they'll do some hazies, and those are, we kind of bemoan sometimes, like those are what sell the fastest. And the same case with us as well. Yeah, that Saison carried some haze. We used a ton of raw spelt in it. But so they do a lot of old school lagers. They actually do some open fermentation.
This is amazing.
You've probably heard a lot of this story already, but yeah, it was kind of, whenever we host a brewery for a collab, we try to kind of do something that might be their niche and kind of take us out of our comfort zone a little bit. So we actually hadn't worked as a home brewer. I was really passionate about mixed culture stuff and worked a lot with bacteria and Brettanomyces, but since coming to Third Planet, we had never actually been able to do that yet, other than kettle sours. So that was our first time putting Brettanomyces in our cellar.
Interesting.
And it was fun.
And that's dangerous. I mean, you can infect your entire system if you don't do it correctly, if I'm correct.
It can be. More and more, I think the more brewers are using it, the more we're realizing what we can get away with. I've been reassured. Brettanomyces, I guess, doesn't really. Now, again, I'm not a scholar on this, so I wouldn't claim what I say as the final authority, but a lot of breweries are doing it now because essentially Brettanomyces behaves basically the same as Saccharomyces yeast. That's just diastaticus positive, which a lot of brewers use. So like your common Saison Saccharomyces strains, we use for our Hefeweizen, we use a dry yeast because we don't do it often enough to justify keeping fresh liquid, and that yeast is particularly really difficult to harvest and then repitch. So we just do dry bricks, and that yeast is actually diastaticus positive. So that stuff is as lethal as Brettanomyces on the brew house. We haven't had any problems, so I guess we're doing something right with our cleaning procedure. So as long as your cleaning is in check, then you should be good. I did run like boiling hot water through that tank for about a half hour after we so that took care of it.
Be safe.
And I guess it's funny that you're talking about yeast and pitching it, because that's kind of an interesting story of what you just did yesterday with the beer that Steve is drinking right now.
Yeah, some Dankside. Yeah, that's our best selling beer. It started. I named that beer when it was a 5-gallon bucket in a spare bedroom in my old house. So,
because of course everybody has to be a Pink Floyd fan,
right? Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, we had so usually we use White Labs 007, just a dry British ale yeast.
Okay,
finishes nice and clean, harvests great. But I kind of figured if we were for some reason going to lose power, it would not be a bad time to use some Kveik yeast in there. So we actually just did a collab with Ferris Artisan Ales. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. They're up they're in the Birmingham area, Alabama. So where we're at, we kind of have as many friends in Alabama as we do in Florida. But Nate there, he had been formerly the head brewer, or managed the sour program at Avondale, and had worked at Good People as well. So
I know Good People, definitely.
Yeah, been around the block in the Birmingham brew scene, so it's been cool to work with them. But we did a kettle sour IPA, and primary fermented it with Kveik yeast. So I had some sitting in the bottom of a tank, so I just pulled some of that. And so it's probably ripping at like 85 to 90 degrees right now because we have no temperature control. But it'll be a happy little accident, I suppose.
That's amazing. So being in such an interesting location in Florida, one that I guess few people really consider to be Florida, because when you think of Florida, it's all Miami and Orlando, basically.
Right.
How was the effect with the quarantine? How much of a downturn did you get? Do you usually get a lot of tourists that come through that you all of a sudden didn't have anymore? And how did that affect everybody else, not just in Niceville, but obviously the greater Pensacola craft beer scene?
Yeah, so for us, we are right across the bridge from Destin, which is a pretty big tourist again, less Florida people, more like Alabama. They call it the Redneck Riviera. Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas. People from all over the South come to vacation in Destin. So our origins, and even to this day, really a big chunk of our volume that moves out is in our tap room. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that has been focused on the town of Niceville. There really wasn't a whole lot going on in this town prior to our opening. So we've kind of established ourselves as just kind of a major place to congregate in town. And so that's put us, we're by volume, I think top 75 tap rooms in the state, which, for a small town like Niceville, sounds kind of crazy, but there's a lot of people here, and I think a lot of people are looking for craft beer and they don't even know it. They just need to find the right one to turn them on to it. So
you get a lot of the military crowd too, right? Coming out of Pensacola.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So Niceville too is close to basically a couple miles from Niceville is Eglin Air Force Base. And then on the other side of Fort Walton Beach is Hurlburt Field. So yeah, we have two major Air Force bases in our area as well. So yeah, there, a lot of people who are, kind of fit the beer demographic, I guess, through that. But yeah, it's been going well, but, sorry, I kind of forgot what the original question was before I started ranting about.
That's perfectly fine, but it's actually interesting because, especially in North Florida, and I know Steve is very close to High Springs Brewing. He was the one that introduced me to Hallpatter Brewing. You've got the same sort of MO and story that small town, middle of nowhere, the brewery comes in, and that sparks a revitalization. Did that just sort of happen, or was that something that in the back of your mind you really wanted to have happen for Niceville?
Well, so I was when Third Planet opened, I was still teaching. So I went to college to be an educator. My wife is an educator, so I can relate to the fundraising for the classroom. I need to try and talk my wife into doing that a little bit, but so I was teaching high school history over in Fort Walton Beach. And two guys, Tim McCool and Jason Doster, they are retired officers in the Air Force, and they had met each other, I think, when they were both in DC, and they both found themselves close to retirement time in Niceville at the same time, and they had kind of talked to each other about maybe opening a brewery. So they opened it up, and I think they really had, especially with the size of what our original spot was, there really was no intention of doing anything other than being a local watering hole. And just to give you an indicator, we were kegging initially into nothing but Cornelius kegs. So, that shows you're not distributing your beer at all. So I think we were able to make like 90 to 110 barrels in a year. So, very, very small. But yeah, so that was kind of the origin, and so undoubtedly that was kind of the thought. I think they created it because they saw the need. Craft beer is now at this point where there's this new wave of what the trend is in the market, and it's kind of like local coffee shop on the corner. It's not just a town has a brewery now; like neighborhoods have a brewery, and they would travel a lot with their work and go to California and just see the brewing scene. And so I think they saw an opportunity and realized that a town like Niceville would appreciate that. So I think that was kind of their motivating factor.
And then obviously we have to talk about the Forbes article from last year, because you were named one of the 50 fastest growing breweries in the country, one
Yeah.
of only 3 that were here in the state of Florida.
Right.
Did you see any sort of pop in your social media in people coming through the doors?
Yeah. So the numbers to that are we kind of, I don't want to say we had it easy. So it's calculated by percentage of growth. So we grew 5-fold in a year, basically. Or no, I think, yeah, it was. So what we had done the year before was like 120 barrels, and then I think we did 600. But now, just to give you an idea, now we're going to be about like 1,200. So
wow.
even though in a few years that is a pretty big growth for us. But yeah, I mean, just when the new place opened up, we have a really big campus, a lot of outdoor space surrounding the tap room. It really did drive a lot of people. It was kind of people who were diehard beer people initially, but I think now it's just kind of at this thing where we sell wine by the glass and some cider, just for people who might not be beer people as well. But yeah, that's helped quite a bit having a new facility, and honestly, like upgrading to a new brew system, I think has helped a little bit with the quality of the product we've been able to put out.
Okay.
And that in and of itself, I think, putting out, more consistent quality product has helped drive people in a little bit too, to the point people, they crave our beer, and that reminds me, going back to the COVID thing. We honestly, during the first shutdown, we actually moved more beer than we usually do. So we're curbside pickup only, and we're doing home deliveries as well. But we moved a ton of beer. We had a perfect plane collab come out that month too, so that was gone in like a day.
Did you guys have the canning facility before COVID shut down?
We did.
So,
packaging has been, people who weren't packaging obviously have been scrambling to package. We were fortunate enough to already have a crowler machine, and we have a little micro canning line. We have some friends down at Seventh Son, and they recently bought a micro canner as well. They're a little company up in Michigan, but it's pretty solid. We can do like a case a minute, basically.
That's not bad.
It makes for a long day when you have 200 cases to run, but because we're not actually ever at a case a minute. In theory, you should.
Nice.
But yeah, so that helped a ton. The fact that we had beer in package, and I really think in terms of actually having a reputation, people, you start seeing our beer being checked in on Untapped, like across the country. I mean, not a ton, but when we were just in glass growlers to go, like, that stuff just doesn't really happen. So canning has been a game changer for us. So that helped us move a ton of liquid in the first shutdown. The second shutdown, we really struggled for a little bit. We didn't have a food service license, and we actually had Halsey Bashirs, the secretary of the DBPR. He was doing kind of a state circuit. He came up to Pensacola, and Odd Colony hosted that, and I had to go to that. And
how was that?
I don't know.
Already, I can tell you
from what I
understand that
I think the DBPR was in a tough legal spot. I think they knew that tap rooms were not like nightclubs. They fully realized that, but I don't think they could find a way to legally differentiate us.
And it seems like some of the times the enforcement kind of got lax there for a little bit.
Yeah.
And then there were other times where FBI agents are walking into, Hal Patter.
Yeah. Yeah. And I read like the account from Ardwolf, breweries too. Very unfortunate. I think the way that it had kind of been communicated to breweries, like announcing major changes via Twitter is just, I get it. Like, I know everybody can see Twitter quickly and the information disseminates, but then it's like, wait, is this really happening? Because, like, you know, they're saying it's 9 a.m. It's like, hey, your tap room is shut down, effective like in 2 hours, and it's a Friday.
Yeah.
You know, so that was kind of tough. I try to give the state a little bit of leeway, because I know it's a tough time, and nobody has ever had to deal with this in our lifetime. So I try to give them a little bit of benefit and some slack, but you know, I think ultimately, to their credit, they did a really quick turnaround on our 509, the food service license.
Okay.
That was basically the message from Bashir's was, you know, get your 509. We're trying to make it as seamless as possible. So we put that application in. I think we had it in like 4 or 5 days. So now we're purveyors of world famous hot dogs, like every other brewery in the Panhandle. and because we have hot dogs, we are now able to be open. Although now, you know, on Monday, obviously, so now we could ditch the hot dogs if we wanted to, but.
I was going to say a couple things. First of all, I love. It's always been my joke that I want to call them DeSantis dogs, because every brewery, all of a sudden, got a roller grill.
Right.
But I guess it's an interesting question, and I'll let you answer this. But I do have to mention that I did crack open beer number 2, which is the Blue Water Hefeweizen, which I just want to sit and enjoy the label, because it is just stunningly beautiful. Steve, have you opened up your stout yet?
I have not opened the stout yet.
All right, and then I figure
that's a later beer.
Okay.
Unless you open it tonight, I'll go.
No, it's up to you, because I know we got to do these other two, and one of these, the green one, the West Coast Hipster, is very well regarded by the Tallahassee Beer Society, so I can't wait to open that one up.
I'm looking forward to the West Coast.
Yeah, I know, but I digress. Let's go back to because obviously you had the Launchpad, you sold the Launchpad over to I can't remember the name of the brewery. They're probably going to kill me. They're probably watching. Thank you.
Yep.
At this point, moving forward, because I know they're going to open, Elga Beer Company is currently building out in Pensacola. Do you think that breweries from here on out, because of everything that happened with DBPR, because of everything that happened with the shutdown, that they're just going to have to open with some sort of 509 food product from here on out?
I think most places have done that already. And I think, you know, just to give you an example, now given the new changes to the executive order, that now we can sell beer even without the 509, I think we're still going to keep it.
Okay.
Just because we don't know, you know, if numbers suddenly spike again, it could be because of schools opening. You know, but in the end, I think if there's one thing we've learned this year, it's that I think politicians have to put up the appearance that they're doing something. And I think they've determined we're probably the thing that is the most frivolous, I guess, to society. I don't, you know, obviously beer is very important to me, but then you have these people who, you know, not everybody is going to wait in line for a Jay Wakefield release, you know, or let alone know what Jay Wakefield is. Yeah. So it's just, you know, to the average politician, it might just be, tap rooms, you know, not a huge deal. So realizing that and realizing that the state that we're probably target number 1 if another shutdown does come, I think it is smart to just hold on to that 509 and keep it going. You can deactivate it and then reactivate it, I think, for a couple $100, but honestly, being able to have your tap room open, I think a weekend of us having our tap room open paid for the license, you know, so all the hoops to jump through. You know, I get it. We're trying to work with the state. They're in a tough situation. Obviously, we didn't like, you know, we were very much stuck in the middle of a tough situation too, you know. That's what was so brutal. Like everybody else in town, you could get Dank Side of the Moon on tap at, you know, 15 other places in town, except for at the place that makes it, you know? Yeah. So that was kind of a difficult situation, but yeah, we've got our 509. We're serving hot dogs. We're going to keep it that way for a while.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'll be right back.
Yeah, go for it. Go. I figure, do you want to just go straight for West Coast hipster? Yes, he does. He really wants
There
it.
you go. Nice.
Was there a lot of community push for you to open, whether you even could or not? Were there a lot of people that are beating down the door saying, "Yeah, just open," or let me grab something and just drink in the yard?
That was probably the biggest difficulty we had. It was just weird during some of these shutdowns, just like the I guess kind of the lawlessness of it all. Like, anything went, seemingly, we never would have thought prior to all this that I could leave the brewery and deliver beer to somebody's doorstep, right?
Yeah.
Because of all the distribution laws. But now, like, even post shutdown, the DBPR has still basically said we can keep doing that. So
really,
yeah. Although I will say, now that we're open, it's not really in our interest. We're not going to have a lot of people order that way anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been interesting. Some people were giving us a hard time about, you should just open up. It is kind of difficult too, because in a small town like Niceville, we don't have a lot of ABT agents. When you're in, Miami, Jacksonville,
right?
Tampa, it's a little bit different. They literally live there.
I'm actually waiting to hear all the stories come out of the bars that open in secret, like prohibition style bars and speakeasies. They happened. They had to have.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. We refrained from that just because we didn't, as much as we hated money being left on the table, nothing could be worse than losing our 2 COP. So we kind of put that as priority number one. So we've been doing our best to comply with the state. It's tricky sometimes, but we're trying our best for sure.
Do you think that there is, kind of going back to the whole Florida Craft Beer Day and everything, do you think that it's possible for us to eventually get people that are a little bit more positive towards Florida craft beer and passing the legislation that's needed for us to do things like self-distribution, like franchise reform, and so on?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it can happen. Bashir's actually did talk about that briefly.
Really?
Yeah, he spoke about that briefly in the meeting that we had. He, not committal one way or the other, but I think he recognized that it was very real and that a lot of other states already do it, and those tend to cultivate a good beer culture. So I think we can get there. It's the biggest thing is just money. You have a lot of money on the other side of the argument that goes to the politicians, and Third Planet Brewing is not helping Ron DeSantis get elected. Ron DeSantis does need our area of the state very badly. I'll say that.
Gotcha.
So I don't know. It's it's tough. I mean, it certainly can happen. I come from Michigan. That's where I grew up, and so it's self-distro state up to a certain amount, and I think it just really helps with the overall beer community to allow people to do that. I think once you get to a certain size, I will say we have a very good relationship with our distributor Vintage. They're a boutique shop over in Destin, so they distribute. They actually just picked up Toppling Goliath in this area.
Oh wow!
So now randomly there's like King Sue on the shelves around here. Nobody cares about Dank Side of the Moon anymore. But I mean, we have a good working relationship with them. I think they do a lot of things that, if we ever wanted to self-distribute, I don't know, when you actually start looking at it, like a lot of times the person who drives the truck makes as much money as the head brewer in a brewery. Then you have the cooler to maintain, the truck fleet. There is a lot to it that I don't know if breweries, when it actually came time to plan it out, if they would want to do it. But above all else, you got to have that option. And I do think it's kind of silly that we don't. It's it's state mandated inefficiency.
It shouldn't fall on smaller breweries. It should fall on the Total Wines and the Publixes to pay for the distribution.
Yeah.
If they want the beer, they should pay for the shipping. Whereas your small breweries that are barely surviving might not have that, be able to afford that.
Right. Yeah. No, it's very true. I think we're in a position where we might stick with our distributor, but I absolutely believe that you've got to have the option for places to self distro if they want. It kind of makes your eyes bug out when you see what the distributor makes for, picking it up and dropping it off.
Yeah.
Like 50% of what we actually, in terms of actual profit, it's about equal to what we're making on the product. So that it's tough to see, but it kind of is what it is. They do a lot for us, and they do take care of our beer. They keep it cold, which a lot of distributors do not do. So, we order some, saisons and stuff like that. That'll come to us that are all foam. And, it's because it's been in a warm warehouse for the last month, So Vintage is good about keeping our stuff cold and, looking after the product a little bit.
Good.
I am absolutely, from what I've been seeing every year, it just seems to get brought up and then it just kind of drops. Reed O'Donnell, I don't know if you know him well, also with Perfect Plain. He's on the Brewers Guild board. So I do kind of occasionally just kind of check with him and see how he thinks self-distro is coming along. Like I said before, it's a money battle and there's a lot of money on the other side. And so I don't know if we can somehow figure out an effort to try and donate to other people. Then I think the time will come. I think we're a little bit behind other places, but as craft beer continues to rise in profile in the state, I think it starts to mean a lot to a town. Niceville appreciates that they have 4 breweries, and so these people who otherwise might not have even thought twice about it, now all of a sudden they support it. And I think also, sorry, last thing, I've talked way too much about
No, go for it.
I think the quarantine has kind of laid bare kind of the craziness of the required distributor. Again, going back to that, I can take my beer from the brewery and drop it off on your doorstep now. It's like, wait, so why is it that there has to be a middleman?
Exactly.
It's just the state saying that it's just state mandated inefficiency is what it is.
And it's kind of funny that you mention excuse me. It's funny that you mentioned the city of Niceville. And were there a lot of difficulties with getting things started? I've heard a lot of breweries that have a lot of horror stories about some of the terrible things that the cities either made them go through because they didn't want a brewery or because they genuinely didn't know what to do and had no idea how to actually legislate. But it sounds like Niceville is pretty open and understanding of what a brewery can do economically to a city.
Yeah, they've, the city council, Lanny Corbin, who's a great guy. He's been the city manager since the 80s here. There are a fair amount of people here, but it's still a small town. And, Lanny comes in and, we'll sit at the bar or, pre-COVID, sit at the bar and have a Boggy Bayou Stout in the evening because the Launchpad was, right by his house while he's walking the dog, so they've always been very supportive of us, I think, and especially as they saw how popular we've become, they've actually tried brainstorming some ideas to kind of try and create a town center with us as part of it.
Interesting.
So we've definitely enjoyed the local support. Sometimes we run into inspectors who just literally have never inspected a brewery before, so they didn't know like how things were in the industry. Like our cooler in our new spot has these French doors with windows in them.
Oh wow, nice.
And it's because the inspector, we had the the kind of the standard roll it forward and backward foam insulated metal door. And he's like, no, you have to have like doors that you can see through, like a regular cooler. So we have these French windows in our big walk-in beer cooler. It's pretty funny.
Okay, gotta love that.
But you do what you have to do to get open. They told us we had to have them, so we've got them.
All right, we're gonna make Danny Aller from the Tallahassee Beer Society very happy in the next couple seconds because we have cracked open West Coast Hipster,
Nice,
which is the Brute IPA. Which it's funny, the Brute IPA had its heyday.
right?
It was really, really, really popular.
Right.
And then it just seems to have disappeared in favor of smoothies, basically.
Yeah, it was gone as fast as
weird.
Yeah.
I'm a little upset to see it go. I was kind of happy that it's what replaced the alcoholic root beer phase.
Right.
But
yep.
First, so I guess walk us through West Coast Hipster, and then will Third Planet ever brew a smoothie beer? Which is, I know, one of Steve's absolute favorites of all time.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing he's muted right. Nope. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
the smoofie. It's
yeah, we
shudder.
So West Coast Hipster. So first, I'll lead with maybe some unfortunate news. Actually, tomorrow we're brewing West Coast Hipster again, but we are actually we're changing the beer a little bit.
Interesting.
So, like you said, brews have kind of had their day, and they just kind of fell out of fashion real fast. I had a lot that I just didn't really prefer, but with ours, we did a lot of elements that made it less brute tasting. It actually just tastes almost like a bone dry West Coast IPA. So we're actually modifying it. We're keeping the same grains. We're keeping the same hops, the same dry hop schedule, but we're actually modify it to traditional West Coast IPA.
So it's going to be a lot more alpha acids, a lot more bitterness.
More than usual. I think there have been some more contemporary West Coasts that are still focused on the dry hop. One thing that is unique, I think just our dry hop combination in that is geared towards some dank pine. Although I've noticed in this batch of Hipster, it was a little fruity. We've got some Centennial in. We buy Centennial on spot. So we don't have contracts. So unfortunately, that's one problem when you're not contracted for a certain hop. When you're at our size, you can be subject to variability. You know, just because you buy Citra does not mean it's all the same. You know, or Mosaic, I see a huge difference in. Some Mosaic can be super tropical. Some Mosaic is very dank.
Interesting.
And that's what, you know, some people will drink an IPA. It's like, oh yeah, Mosaic, definitely. It's like, you don't know that. I'm sorry, but there are a few, like Sabro is super unique. Like that coconutty vanilla thing is unmistakable, I feel like. But, you know, with that one, we went pretty classic. The first recipes, it started as a 2-barrel batch at the small place at the Launchpad. It was just Cascade and Columbus for the dry hop, but I loved how dank it was. But I've cut in. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys have had Pliny the Elder in the last few years since they opened the new facility in Windsor, but it's gotten significantly more like aromatic and hop flavor, and less on the IBUs. Just in my perception of it.
Gotcha.
So Pliny is kind of, I mean, I love that beer, and Vinny from Russian River has always been great about sharing knowledge to the homebrew community. So I've read his stuff religiously prior to brewing professionally, and he, you know, just a classic hop combo is Centennial. Well, so we do 2 parts Simcoe, 1 part Centennial, 1 part Columbus. And Columbus is kind of an old school one. Like it smells like skunky, dank earthiness. But as part of a dry hop, I think it can be really nice. Cool. But yeah, so we're keeping all that. It'll finish probably about like 10-10 or like 2 degrees, 2.5 degrees Plato for a final. So those batches of Hipster currently finish at like -1 degree Plato. It's like 0.096. So So we do a few things. One of the things with brutes, I think in 2018, every brewery wanted to be the person who was brewing the next trendy IPA. And so people just caught word of this trendy style. And so just from my looking on forums, people were just going crazy about brutes. When I went to buy the enzyme necessary to make a brute, I I couldn't get it for a month because the enzyme was out. Because everybody was like, I think it was like February of 2018 or something like that. Yeah, it was just going crazy. So, but a lot of other guys are doing like champagne yeast. We don't bother with the champagne yeast. We just do classic Chico American California ale. So it's cleaner. I've had some ones with champagne yeast that I just personally don't care for it. Gotcha. So all we do is we mash low. It's a pretty low gravity. We add a bunch of corn sugar after the boil is done. Corn sugar just translates to alcohol, not body, because it's all purely fermentable. Yeah, almost 100% fermentable. And then all I do is just add a little bit of amylase enzyme during the knockout, and that gives you a beer that gets to below 1.000 specific gravity. Yeah. Every time I would do a gravity reading, I just couldn't believe it because I didn't feel like I did anything that special, but it just keeps on chugging along. The amylase enzyme that you add, it just takes some of those non-fermentables and just keeps, creates the sugars that the yeast can consume.
That's amazing. And I guess it's funny that you mention all of that, in that I know that I still have a lot to learn about brewing beer and a lot to learn about the science and everything. Do you find yourself having to go through basically mini science classes with a lot of the people as they come in? Yeah,
it forces my ultimate goal. So, my education background, I was a history teacher, so I'm by no means a scientist.
I was too. I just want to,
perfect.
Cheers for history teachers.
Yeah. Do you coach anything? Because they always want to know, do you coach anything? They always want to know if you coach something.
I used to coach track and field, actually.
There you go. Yeah, I never coached. I was rare. I was an anomaly in the social studies department at my high school. But my ultimate goal always is just to make the best beer I possibly can. And whatever I have to do to make that happen, I'm going to figure it out. So you find yourself counting yeast cells. You find yourself, figuring out a good pH meter. We're fortunate to have somebody on staff, Natalie Sullivan. She actually just left for Oklahoma, but she had taught microbiology, and so she was great on the hemocytometer, and told me the stuff I needed to get. So she helped me learn quite a bit. But yeah, it's interesting the stuff you find yourself saying, and you don't realize how geeky you sound until you're not talking to another brewer, So yeah, it is. It's cool though. I enjoy having a mental challenge and trying to figure new stuff out. It keeps things interesting.
And I was going to ask, in terms of the region, obviously Niceville in particular, but Pensacola sort of in general, is there a beer style that sort of reigns supreme in the area? And for example, I always use Jacksonville because I didn't realize exactly how much the cream ale owned Jacksonville. Really? Everybody's got a cream ale, every single one of them. I mean, you take a look at Bold City, right up there. They release a cream ale through half the state. It's amazing.
That's interesting. Yeah. Yes. In our area, the best-selling beer, I don't know if you're familiar with Grayton Beer Company.
Oh, yeah.
But 30A Beach Blonde just dominates on the shelves. In terms of craft breweries, they're literally, that brand is competing with Bud Light, Corona, Michelob Ultra. Like, it's in like a top 6 brand in the area for Destin, which for craft beer to be top 10 amongst all beers, including the macro segment, is pretty impressive. So there's a lot of that. That stuff tends to move quite a bit with the tourist crowd. I will say, as craft beer expands in these bigger cities, and now we have people coming from the Atlanta market who know Variant Brewing and Pontoon and New Realm, or Birmingham who know like Ghost Train, Good People, Trim Tab, Ferris. You start to see people, tourists who were a lot of times cast aside as rednecks, who do appreciate craft beer, because it really has grown everywhere. So it has helped our segment a little bit. For us, just in our experience, IPAs move super quick. Pensacola really has, with the emergence of Perfect Plain and Odd Colony, a lot of lagers, which I'm a fan of that trend. And they do tend to actually sell pretty well at those places as well. I think it makes a lot of sense for Florida for that to be a popular style. We have a
few other brewers too that say lagers are making this comeback now, to where they start rivaling IPAs here in the future.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. We had a cream ale, but we actually got rid of it in favor of a Pilsner. So
interesting.
If that's any indicator of where things are going.
And I've actually heard a lot of people, kind of like what Steve was saying, because they haven't had as much product move, they haven't needed to get product out of the tanks very fast, and so they've been able to experiment with lagering a little bit more.
Yeah.
Is that the case with Third Planet as well?
Yeah, we brewed a big barley wine that we then barreled because we didn't have to worry about moving that product. And we actually had started making our Pilsner a little bit before COVID, but it has worked out nicely. We have a 30 barrel that I guess you could call it extra. We don't have to turn and burn it like every 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. So it's been nice to brew twice as much. We have a 15 barrel brew house.
Gotcha.
So we have 4 15 barrel tanks and 3 30 barrel tanks. So it's nice to just brew twice as much of a beer that takes twice as long and let it kind of chill out there for a while.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Brian. I do appreciate your time. I do appreciate everything. I know that I cannot get to this fourth beer. I should probably just relax where I am right now. But if you follow us on Florida Beer Blog on Instagram or Twitter, or obviously you're on FL Beer Blog on Facebook if you're watching us live, we will have this hazy pale ale, luminous cloud, and some other goodies that they sent along. But I need to relax for right now, if you don't mind.
Yeah. You don't want to crack into those stout crowlers right now.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So Steve, you got the Bayou. I definitely can't wait to hear how that is.
That stout might be getting cracked into tonight.
Well, yeah, because I'm not going to say that you're an alcoholic. I'm just going to say that beard has magical powers. So
I like to drink.
Brian, I guess give us some information where you can find more on Third Planet, and obviously you can't really find them unless you drive up to Lower Alabama. So
right, yeah, we're pretty fully distributed between Panama City and Pensacola. We always encourage people to come to the tap room. That's where you'll find the freshest beer and some one-offs, like a lot of our collabs that we do. We've been doing a lot lately. We don't generally distribute those. Those stay in-house. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so thirdplantbrewing.com. You can see some of our lineup. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram. We're a pretty local niche product, but we're getting a little bit of a name thanks to package. But we love seeing people come in and stop by.
Excellent. I appreciate it. So next week, we will be back at the same time with Tampa Beer Crafting the Bay. It's actually a movie that is being made about the history of Tampa beer. They're about halfway finished with filming, so we're going to get a sneak peek onto next week's episode, and you'll be able to find out how you can help them get across the finish line. Brian Detweiler from Third Planet Brewing, thank you so much. Please say hello to Rachel for us. I'm sorry that she couldn't be here, and please say hello to that Kvike yeast dank side of the moon. I'm curious as to how that comes out.
Yeah.
And whatever you can do to keep this West Coast hipster just the way that it is, I will join.
I promise
the Tallahassee Beer Society.
I know, it's funny. So we decided about a month ago we were going to change it, and now all of a sudden we have people talking a lot about it. It's like, oh crap, what do we do?
That's amazing.
We're just behind the 8 ball on the trend, unfortunately. Like, they were so cool and then so not, like, real quick, and yet we still had them. So
that's funny.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on. We do appreciate you coming on and talking about Third Planet. I do appreciate it. And for those of you that are listening, find us at floridabeerblog.com, floridabeermedia.com, at Florida Beer Blog on Instagram and Twitter, FL Beer Blog on Facebook. Steve is pretty. He's at The Great Beer Adventure on Instagram. I need to get him to tweet more, but I'm getting there. He's getting there. You're getting there, aren't you? Yeah, you're working on it. We will see everybody next week. Have a great day and drink Florida Craft. Bye now.